Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the author of the book Inspired Living, no other than Mr. Scott Maderer.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Scott, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Scott Maderer. I work as a full-time coach at this point. I've been a school teacher in the past. I've worked in the corporate world in the past. I've owned my own businesses in the past. And currently I run a full-time coaching business. I've been doing that since 2017. I help small business owners master their time, their talent, and their treasures so that they can live out their calling. And that's what the book is about, Inspired Living. It's about mastering those areas of your life so that you can go out and do the thing that you're put on this planet to do and really enjoy it and live it, as opposed to just sort of creating a job for yourself or running from emergency to emergency, fire to fire kind of thing. I'm married, have an adult son. I live in Central Texas. My wife and I just recently moved from where we had been living to a new town. And so we're kind of setting up and experiencing living in town again. We've been living out in the country where we drove an hour to go to the grocery store, and now there's 4 grocery stores within 15 minutes. So it's kind of a big change for us.
Definitely, Mr. Scott Mader. Thank you so much for giving your knowledge to the world. So, how does the book define a calling and why it's important to recognize and pursue it?
So calling is one of those things that I think a lot of times we overlap our calling with our career. We kind of think about what we do for a living and we say, okay, that's our calling. And the truth is, at least in my definition, they're not really exactly the same thing. I think of the roles that we have, and that could be, your role as a son, your role as a father, your role as a spouse, your role as a friend, or your career, your job, the thing you do. I think of those as assignments. They're roles that we have. The calling, on the other hand, is that deeper kind of drive behind it. It's the thread that gives you energy, gives you joy, feeds your soul in those roles that you have. So we all know that there's things that we do that give us energy, and then there's things that we do that kind of drain energy from us. And your calling is those common factors that give you that energy, that feed your soul. That they're the things that you look up and you go, man, when I get to do that, everything clicks. That's the moments that I really enjoy. And obviously during a day, during a week, during a month, you're never going to be 100% only doing the things that are aligned 100% with your calling. At the end of the day, the laundry still has to get done, the dishes still have to get washed, that kind of thing. But the more that you can begin to work towards embedding those sorts of things into your life, the more energy you have, the more joy you'll find, and the more you'll feel fulfilled. And I also believe the better you'll do when you're actually serving others, because you're living kind of in your zone of genius. You're living in that area that you've been gifted in. And so you'll also do a better job for others.
Certainly, totally agree, Mr. Scott. So, what is the main purpose of inspired living?
So what happened is, I've been coaching a lot of people, and I keep finding folks over and over that say, I have these things that I really want to do, but at the end of the day, I don't have enough time or I don't have enough money. That tends to be the two areas that people first identify as holding them back. And so I work with folks to kind of break through in those areas. Real truth is, at the end of the day, the only thing I really work on is talent, because the way you handle your time and the way you handle your money isn't really about time and money. It's about you. And so the talent component is the you part. We handle ourselves. We don't manage time. We manage ourselves and how we use time. We don't manage money. We manage ourselves and how we use money. They're simply tools or outputs. And so I decided to kind of take some of those frameworks and those tools and those things that I was working with that was helping client after client after client, and put them into a book, put them into a framework, so that other folks that maybe weren't able to reach me for coaching or weren't able to work with me one-on-one could also avail themselves of those same tools, those same techniques, because at the end of the day, I want to reach more people and help more people so that more people are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Certainly. And how are time, talent, treasures interconnected in the journey toward fulfilling life?
So a lot of what I was just alluding to is kind of how they're interconnected. When you realize that time and money are simply finite resources, no matter how much money you make, there's a limit to it. No matter how much you outsource or delegate or have other people do things for you, time is a finite resource. Time, even more than money, is a finite resource. There's 24 hours in the day. That's it. That's all you get. Now, again, by delegating, by hiring other people, by outsourcing, you can kind of multiply your time, but there's always a limit. There's a point at which you can't do it anymore. And so when you recognize that those are finite resources, at the end of the day, it's not making more money, it's not having more time that makes you do things. Instead, it's about focusing on that third component, the talent, the self component. How do you look at the world? What are your limiting beliefs? What do you believe is true about time? What do you believe is true about money? Because those beliefs then create the habits and the routines and the systems and the structures that you go about doing every day. And by doing those things every day, that's what creates the life that you have. And so the real truth is to change those habits, to change those systems, to change those structures. That's the way that you, quote, create more time and create more money. It's not by focusing on just the time and the money. So at the end of the day, they're all connected and they all come back to that talent component.
Very well said, Mr. Scott. Very well said. So, what does the book mean by assembling the puzzle of your calling?
So I use that analogy of putting a puzzle together because I think a lot of times when again, when we go back to calling is kind of that deeper purpose. I think people expect some sort of magical lightning bolt to, come from the sky and be like, this is it. This is what you're supposed to do. I'm not going to say that never happens. Somebody may have that experience, but I think for most of us, instead, it's more of a process of experimentation, process of kind of putting things together, a process of discovering what our calling is. And it's really a journey as opposed to a destination. I don't necessarily think you ever, quote, fully arrive. It's that experience of constantly tweaking and experimenting and new discovery that is that process. And so the book uses that analogy of a puzzle with the idea of, first we put together the outside of the puzzle, then we begin to assemble the interior puzzle pieces. And so that outside is those beliefs, the way you handle your time, the way you handle your money. The inside is that internal work and that sort of self-discovery that we do. And it kind of walks you through that process. Now, again, the where the analogy kind of breaks down a little bit is the puzzle that you're putting together that's your life. Well, the picture on the box changes. The picture that you have when you're 20 is probably different than the picture that you have when you're 35. Not because it was wrong when you were 20, but just because things have changed, life has happened, stuff has changed, and so you've refined that picture. So it's putting it together a puzzle, but it's putting together a puzzle that's sort of in motion and flux while you're doing it. And that's sort of the tricky part. And that's why I tend to teach, as opposed to a kind of one and done, do this and now it's done. It's much more of an iterative kind of looping process where you do work, then you actually look at how that applies and get feedback, and then you revise and refine and change, and then you keep repeating that kind of loop so that over a long period of time, you consistently get a little better every day. And when you do that, over a year, over a decade, you'll see massive changes in your life.
So, Mr. Scott, let's talk about time management and productivity. What are some practical strategies the book offers for managing time effectively?
So the first thing is I'm gonna move off the word time management. I actually hate that word because it implies that what we're doing is changing time in some way. I prefer productivity management or energy management or focus management, because the truth is, again, it's how you pay attention to what you're doing. It's how you use that time. So it's self-management more than it is time management. So with that said, I'll give folks a real quick exercise that they could do. This is one of the ones in the book. There's several more that kind of take this from there, but this is a good starting point. So if you've got that feeling of, I just don't have enough time to get everything done that I need to get done, what I want you to do is something that I'll call the 15-minute miracle. So you just take a sheet of paper. You literally could just take a scrap sheet of paper, and down the left-hand side, write times of the day from when you get up to when you go to bed in 15-minute increments. 15 minutes feels too short for you, use 30. But give yourself half an hour, 15 minutes of time blocks, and just write them down the left-hand side. And then set an alarm, a silent alarm on your phone or on your watch or on your computer, something that will remind you every 15 minutes. When 15 minutes goes by, just jot down on the sheet of paper a few notes about what you did during that 15-minute block of time. What work did you do? Were you scrolling Facebook? Were you answering emails? You don't have to provide all of the detail. This isn't about capturing a detailed list of everything you did, but just kind of put it into the big buckets. Were you productive in the time that you were using? Were you doing kind of busy work? Were you doing admin tasks? Were you just vegging on the couch and watching Netflix? Whatever it is, capture those blocks of time. And do that for 2, 3, 4 days, even a week. And then go back and look at it and start highlighting kind of what are you spending your time on. I've never had anyone do this and not come back after a few days of doing it and be like, I can't believe I'm spending so much time on fill in the blank. It may not be the same thing, but everyone has things that they're spending time on that they don't even realize that they're spending time on, that turn out to be things that they don't want to be spending that much time on. When they look back on it, they're like, I watched this many hours of Netflix, or I spent this much time on Facebook, or I scrolled X for this long, or whatever it was. It's those things that kind of crop up. Or maybe you look back and you realize, look, I'm spending all of this time in these kinds of meetings, but these meetings aren't really productive for me. They're not moving the needle. Or maybe I'm doing something else over here. And it turns out that when I really look at that now, it may have been something that was important to me 3 years ago and I'm still doing it, but maybe it doesn't fit into your life today. And so a lot of times what happens is we build up those habits and routines in our time, but because we're not examining them, because we're not looking at them, we end up in these patterns that are not serving us well. They might have served us one day, but they're not serving us today. And so by not examining that, you don't make shifts, you don't make changes. And so that first step of making changes on anything you do is awareness of what's going on. And so this is a good tool to get you some awareness about where are you actually really spending your time during the day.
Beautifully articulated, Mr. Scott. Very well said. So how does the book suggest overcoming procrastination and distractions?
So procrastination and distraction are things that, I think all of us deal with. And so the first step, again, be aware. Be aware of what is it that's distracting you? What is it that is actually pulling you away from those productive works? That 15-minute exercise that I just shared is a good way of starting to identify some of those. And then I like to think of things as friction and smoothness. So what is friction, right? Friction is that thing that when you move two surfaces together, it kind of resists the motion. It grinds things to a stop. And smoothness, well, if things are smooth, they move easier. So think about what it is that you want to do, and then try to think about how you can make doing that smoother. And then think about the things that you don't want to do, and think about how you could put friction into that step. So as an example, big distraction for most people, our phone, right? Our phone vibrates, our phone buzzes, our phone rings, our phone gives us notifications, and we're here, we're busy, we're working really hard on something, we're focused. Bzz. Our attention goes to the phone. Our attention goes away. So what do? Well, create some friction. Make the notifications harder. So either turn the notifications off on the phone, put the phone in a drawer somewhere, turn it to silent mode. A lot of times now the the phones today, a lot of times you can set them up where if you put it face down, it won't give you any notifications, but if you turn it face up, it will. So turn it face down, make it not give you any notifications. The point is identify those things that are creating that distraction and then make it harder to pay attention to them, move them away. Another example, getting up on time. A lot of people want to get up early, but they have a hard time getting up on time. Okay, how can I make it harder to stay in bed? Create friction around staying in bed and make it smoother to get out of bed. Well, take your alarm clock and move it to the other side of the room. Where now to turn the alarm clock off, you've got to get up and get out of bed and walk across the room. Now you're already out of bed. And most people, it's kind of like, well, I'm up, I might as well stay up. And they'll go ahead and get on with their day. So it's little things like that to create smoothness or friction around the activities that you want to do, to create the framework so that then the focus and attention can go to where you actually want it to go.
Certainly. So, Mr. Scott, what would be your advice for those people out there who want to be inspired every day?
One of the things, exercises that I really encourage people to do is a simple gratitude exercise. Basically, that's the idea of getting up in the morning and writing down 3 things that you're grateful for, or do that in the evening if you prefer, but create a time of the day where, as a habit, every day you write down 3 things that you're grateful for. If you want to up level it, for 30 days, you're not allowed to repeat. So no matter what, whatever you put down yesterday, you can't put that down today or tomorrow or the next day, and do that for a month. Do that for 30 days. That really challenges you to find new things that you're grateful for. But get into that habit of every day reflecting on what happened today. No matter how bad the day was, find something that was a win, something that you could be grateful for. Sometimes it's like, I'm grateful I'm still breathing. That's okay. It can be that strong, of this is it. This is all I can find today. Because some of us have, it happens to all of us. We have those days where it's like, today, man, I'm glad I'm awake. I'm glad I'm alive. I'm glad I have a roof over my head, those sorts of things. But it can also be little things. I'm glad I got to talk to Daniel today and come on this podcast. Or it could be big things. I'm glad that, the cancer diagnosis came back and it was clean. Whatever it is, find those things and just kind of repeat that habit every single day. And what happens is your brain begins to recognize things that you're grateful for. Your brain begins to get programmed to look for the positive as opposed to looking for the negative. And you do that long enough and it becomes a habit, just like everything else. And that
Yes,
begins to start your day or end your day with those moments of gratitude, so that then you begin to shift and look at the positive more than the negative.
certainly. So, Mr. Scott, thank you so much for your advice. And what will be your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
Well, I'm actually working on a second book. So that's one of my goals, is to get that second book out in the next year or so. I'm continuing to work on the coaching business, and I continue want to serve people. I've currently served folks in 20 countries and 38 states, and I'd like to eventually get that to all 50 states and over 50 countries. So I'm working on, continue to grow the business, expand the business, and work with those business owners. That's a goal of mine. And then, I'm not really looking to retire or quit working. Coaching is kind of something that I love to do. It is my calling. It feeds my soul, and I get to help other people in that way. So I want to continue to do that. But my wife and I want to do some travel and things like that over the next few years. So we're continuing to hope to do that. But at the end of the day, I really just want to inspire people to do what they're supposed to be doing and do the thing that they're called to do.
Certainly. Good luck to your goals, Mr. Scott. And let's talk about financial stewardship and treasures. What does the book mean by treasures, and how does it go beyond just financial wealth?
So a lot of times, treasures is we think about money, right? And that's definitely a big part of it. But at the end of the day, there's studies out there that show that once you make a certain amount of money, if you increase that amount, your happiness doesn't go up. This is where that expression "money doesn't buy happiness" comes from. At some point, you've got enough creature comforts that adding another creature comfort isn't going to really increase your happiness, or it does. If it does, it's just very temporary. We all have that experience of buying like a brand new car or something, and it's like, ooh, it's exciting. And then after about 3 weeks, it's kind of like, well, it's just the car. And you just get in it. So money and material goods isn't what helps you find long-term joy and long-term happiness. So as an example, I have people actually write down a definition of wealth. What do they define success as? What do they define wealth as? And what's hilarious, if I've asked, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people this, and most of the time what comes back, money's very small parts of it or none of it. Instead, it's things like, freedom. It's things like flexibility. It's things like being able to be, autonomous, control my own life in some way. And money may be a tool that helps you get some of those emotional things, but the true wealth is achieving those emotional things that you want.
Certainly. So, Mr. Scott, how does faith or spirituality play a role in assembling the puzzle of one's purpose?
So by definition, I'm a person of faith, and I use that word calling on purpose because by definition, a calling implies something that comes from outside. So just really and truly the word vocation that a lot of times we just use to mean our career, but career and vocation have different roots. Career comes from a Latin word for cart, something that moves you from point A to point B, where vocation comes from the same root that we use for vocalization or vocal. It means to be called. It means for something to come from outside of you. And so for me, again, I don't care what name people give it. I don't care if you go to a particular church or don't go to church at all, but recognizing that there is a power outside of you that is greater than you is part of being able to discover that calling, because that calling comes from outside of you into you as opposed to the other way around. And so I use that as part of my faith background and part of my beliefs. Again, I don't dictate that to my clients as forms of what beliefs they have to have, but I do think having that sort of faith or understanding of something outside of you that's greater is helpful for being able to identify what you're put on this planet to do.
Certainly. So, Mr. Scott, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please listen to my other podcast, Food 101, in its fifth season, people, fifth season, with Chef Alessandro, one of his specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to our latest episode. We're reading our letters, senders all over the world. So, Mr. Scott, what are the self-reflection question in the book that help readers align their lives with their purpose?
So every chapter has self-reflection questions at the end of each chapter. So my intent with this book wasn't that you just sit down and read it from cover to cover and then you go, okay, that's it, I'm inspired, but rather that you actually do the exercises and do the work. And so I've set it up as both a book and kind of a workbook where there's questions for you to reflect on and think about. Because again, this idea is something that you would do iteratively. You would do it over and over again. You wouldn't just do it once and go through the book one time and be done, but instead you'd repeat it. And so those questions are set up to help you constantly be reflecting and changing and evolving and adapting. Because I really don't believe that most of the time we make changes as some sort of big event where it's just night and day, you flip a switch and everything changes, but instead it's about changing things incrementally in small steps over time. And those reflection track questions are meant to help you do that and recognize when you're doing that.
Mr. Scott Maderer, thank you so much for sharing your empowering books to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your book?
Absolutely. So I actually put together a page just for your listeners. So if you go to my website, which is inspiredstewardship.com, and then /book 101, the numbers, just like in the name of the podcast, you'll find a page there. It's got all of the resources. It's got some free exercises that you can download, as well as a link to the book. I actually have a podcast as well, so it's got information about that. All of that information there at inspiredstewardship.com /book 101.
So, Mr. Scott, invite our listeners to support your podcast as well.
Again, that's on that same page, and or you can find the podcast anywhere podcasts are found. And the name of the podcast is Inspired Stewardship. So the name of the book is Inspired Living, and the name of the podcast is Inspired Stewardship. And the book is everywhere that books are found as well. You can find that any of the great bookstores.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Scott Maderer, because if you support him, more and more empowering books to come, more and more empowering episodes to come. So, Mr. Scott, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.